But it's 22 minutes before 8 here on the programme. It was a litmus test this past Monday as the Post Office went it alone after a few months of partnering with Cash Paymaster Services to pay social grants to beneficiaries. Now, the Constitutional Court was concerned about the cost implications of only contracting the Post Office to pay grants in cash. The court appointed a panel of experts to oversee the social grant payment transition. Mark Barnes, the CEO of the Post Office, is in our Cape Town studios, and he's here to tell us a little bit more about how this transition's been. Mark, great to have you. Thanks so much for coming on. So the Post Office couldn't deliver social grants on its own due to its incapacity at the time. How did Monday go? Talk to us. Was it a success?
It was a great success, actually, and I'm not sure about the detail that you're talking about that we couldn't deliver because of loan capacity. Our funding has never been the issue in terms of the social grants. But let me summarize. I mean, this weekend, this October run, if you want to call it that, I think we paid out some 8.4 billion of social grants to something like 6.7 million grant beneficiaries without any hitches. I think 86% of the grants that were payable this month have already been withdrawn, and anyone who sought to get their grant has got it. We still have some challenges at physical cash pay points. I think in time people will become to realize that you don't have to actually draw your grant on the first day. And so that'll start addressing some queues. You know, we're not a cash in transit company. The Post Office will be there throughout the month, and you can get your cash at autobank machines or merchants, who've got points of sale machines. And so I think the whole transition to a government-led initiative is going to bring with it an education and a change in grant beneficiary behavior. But yesterday we presented to the Interministerial Committee on social grants, and we satisfied them and ourselves that we've complied with the Constitutional Court order of taking over all the cash payments from CPS.
Okay, so SASSA has said that it'll make an advance payment of 541 million rand to the Post Office to help pay with the social grants. Which period is this expected to cover?
Okay, so there's quite a lot of capital upgrade that needs to take place in the Post Office infrastructure and technology to prepare it for this and other potential government payment initiatives. Okay, so SASSA is now investing, and we are also investing in upgrading the general infrastructure of the Post Office to make it compliant with SASSA's high standards. That is happening over a period of time. The initial 541 million that you referred to has been transferred. It's for the upgrade of certain high-density branches. But I think it's important for everyone to understand that this is an intergovernmental initiative. So, we are building a state asset with state funds. Are concerns that CPS, however, doesn't want to completely let go. There are talks of the company still attempting to lure beneficiaries into swapping the current SASSA cards for Net1's Easy Pay. Now, there's also talk that Net1 have more access to the rural areas. They set up pay points there, somewhere where the Post Office struggles to get into. Let's talk about the issue of them wanting to hang on and not let go completely. This is obviously CPS. It's true that CPS/Net1 are seeking to hang on. We have eliminated all the cash payment that they did, but there's still the electronic banking, which will expire. I think the last payment into that account will be made in November. So there will be no further payments made even into electronic banking solutions. CPS has been making press announcements and trying to encourage people to remain with their card. My view on that is that it's primarily because they have a vested interest in the beneficiary and in providing that beneficiary with loans and various other services, which we regard as illegal deductions. I mean, the payment of social grants is a service, not a business, and that's why we've drawn it back into government to look after the beneficiaries. We limit the number of transactions that you can do on a card, one funeral policy, only 10% of your social grant and so on, and we provide a lot of free services. But yes, they have been trying to lure and retain beneficiaries. Our offering will not be able to be competed with, given the cost. Not even the commercial banks will be able to compete with the Post Office SASA combined offering. So we expect them to have tried to hang on because they've got economic vested interest, which we don't believe is in the interest of our beneficiaries.
Having said that, however, I mean, setting up pay points in the far-flung rural areas where it is very difficult for some of the residents to access the post office, and they go there and they're able to do it. I mean, and they still have the business in those areas. When are you going to be able to access them?
Well, we do access them. We've got 1,740 cash pay points. Let's just be clear. The delivery to cash pay points was subcontracted out of CPS to one of the cash in transit companies, okay, who arrive there in some sort of armor-protected vehicle, stay there for the day, distribute cash. We have, as the Post Office of South Africa, the biggest footprint in the rural areas and the biggest footprint in South Africa of any infrastructure. We've got 1,600, 700 odd branches and another 800 points of representation. So no one can compete with us rurally. And where we are required to do so at this stage, we are transporting members to a post office. But we will have as many cash pay points and a deeper penetration than CPS. So, I mean, I regard some of this almost as a media propaganda, which is inappropriate.
Okay, Mark, I want to talk a little bit about the financial status of the post office. It's not long ago that you took over the entity. It was in a dire financial state. There's still issues with the post office. I mean, we've had strikes. There were at a time there were something like 38 million undelivered postal services at the end of July. That's now gone to about 16 million. There's a backlog that are sitting on floors and depots. A lot of unpaid bills. You've asked for a loan. You're hoping that loan guarantee, I imagine, of 2.7 billion will come through. The appointment of a new finance minister. Let's kind of mix that answer together. Your hopes for the midterm budget, whether or not that loan will be guaranteed, and your reaction to this new finance minister.
I can only answer 17 questions
Go for it. I know you can do it. You're good at it. Let's go.
Okay. First of all, we did have a capital injection of 3.7 billion at the beginning of this year to repay all of our debt except for 400 million. So our total indebtedness is about 400 million at the moment. We have a group net asset value of something like 3.5 billion. So there's no question about our solvency. Liquidity is an issue because we're still running an operating loss in our core business. That is going to be offset quite substantially by the income that we'll generate between the entities of SASA and the Post Office Group. Okay, that's the first point. The second point is, for many, many years, I'd argue for more than a decade, we have not invested in infrastructure at the Post Office, and that's what's resulted us being in a less competitive alternative to the people of South Africa. So we are raising capital to do that, both for the SASA upgrade of our infrastructure and our own need to have capital investment. So I don't want to second guess the outcome of the medium-term expenditure framework, the medium-term budget speech, which is happening on the 24th of October, I think, and the public can hear then what capital. But we have asked for further capital. My view is we should move away from government guarantees and capital provided by commercial banks to looking at issuing our own capital instruments so that we become financially independent with an appropriate term structure to our debt. But that is all going to come in place. Yes, we found ourselves at the beginning of this year not paying creditors on time, and it is in fact that which resulted in the build-up of the backlog. If you don't pay your transport providers, your forklift providers, if you don't pay your stationers and your other suppliers, that brings the institution to a halt. The strike only lasted 2 weeks, thankfully, and we were able to settle those issues. And in fact, I must say this, I'm grateful to the unions and Labour generally. For 3 years, we've only had very, very little interruption, and we have a very good relationship with them. Let's move on. So I think the funding is going to come, but I would argue, for the first time in a long time, the government is going to look at investing in the post office rather than just keeping us above water, okay, and paying our bills. And that is where the change will take place. That's where we become competitive again. I welcome the appointment of Minister Tito Mboweni. I've had exposure to him in the past over my many roles in the private sector. I think he brings an extraordinary amount of steadiness and predictability and certainty, which, if anything else, we need that.
Excellent. Well done. You see, you answered them all in one. Well done, Mark Barnes. Thank you. Thank you so much for talking to us. Our next guest here on the program, in fact, as I end off this interview, is from SASSA. Mark Barnes, I just want to, if I can, still get from Nehau, I beg your pardon. Mark Barnes, I'm not sure if you're still there, but just to get your reaction from some of the employees of SASSA that are going to be embarking on a countrywide strike. Are you able to respond what this will do to your services?
Yeah, I think this is a SASSA issue. This is not a SAPO issue. And I think, as I understand it, that the objection that Nahawu has is about the definition of the job descriptions as people undergo changing for this transformation. But it would be inappropriate for me to speak on behalf of SASSA, and I think they're dealing directly with Nahawu. I hope they resolve it in the national interest.
All right, there we go. Thank you very much, Mark Barnes, talking to us from our Cape Town studios. That was a preview into our next interview, as you heard, talking to Nahawu, embarking on that countrywide shutdown from today. Details after this. Do stay tuned.